Also, if you're hungry for a tomahawk steak on your cruise, you can just come down here to the supermarket and grab it. I'm not sure how you're going to cook it, but here they are. Welcome on board the Colorline Fantasy, which is a ferry that looks a lot like a cruise ship that sails from Kiel in northern Germany up to Oslo and back. A lot of the outside and inside appearance looks just like a cruise ship, and the booking process is very similar to booking a cruise. But now that I'm actually on board and we're heading back to Kiel, I've realized, okay, there are some big differences. And the last one I'm gonna tell you is so different, and I really wish that traditional cruises would allow it. I'm Morgan from the Very Unofficial Travel Guides. I've been making travel videos for over 15 years of popular and not so popular tourist destinations to give you a very honest, unofficial look at what it's like to be there. And I'm also the author of 2 travel books, Getting Stitches on a Cruise Ship and the brand new Places Please, filled with funny, strange, and steamy true stories of things that have happened to me around the world. If you like to read and want to give me a little extra support, check them out on Amazon now. One of the first things I noticed about this that was much different than a traditional cruise is when I got to the terminal, I printed out my own boarding card at a machine. So I didn't even have to actually talk to a person. I just put in my reservation number and it spit out my boarding card. I've never seen that before. When it was time to board, it was much more like boarding an airplane. Another first day experience that is way different than a cruise is there's no muster drill. As you can see, we're sailing away now, and because it's raining outside and I don't have my jacket on, I decided, okay, maybe I'll go down to the promenade deck here. And then I walked past the lifeboats and I thought, oh yeah, what about a muster drill? And apparently on this ship they don't do a muster drill, but they do a ship-wide announcement in Norwegian, German, and English explaining what you have to do in an emergency, and it just says go to the closest station and get a life jacket. That's the information we got. Definitely a little bit different than on a standard cruise ship, wouldn't you say? Another thing that's very different is once you're on board, almost everything costs extra. In other videos, this has become a debate that when you're on a ship and you say this is free, some people say, oh, it's not free. You've already paid for it, so it's just included in the price of the cruise. So I guess maybe I should say, when you're on board, there aren't a lot of things that are included in the price of the cruise, and I'm going to go through a list of them, but first let me tell you what was included in my package. I booked a 2-day cruise from Kiel to Oslo and back. My package included a breakfast buffet and the evening buffet, but no lunch and only drinks in the buffet in the evening. So anything else that I eat or drink on board is something I have to pay extra for, and that includes water, iced tea, coffee, tea. There's literally nothing else to have on board that doesn't cost extra. Another thing that costs extra is the live shows. They have an onboard ensemble that performs one show on the way to Oslo, and they perform a different show on the way to Kiel, and you have to book a table reservation in advance if you want to see the show. They do offer last-minute reservations once you're on board, but when I was booking in advance, one of the shows was already completely sold out. So if you want to see the shows, I definitely recommend making a reservation in advance. And I remember that when MSC was partnering with Cirque du Soleil and Cirque du Soleil was producing shows on their bigger ships, I know that those shows costed extra, and there were some Cirque style shows also on the larger NCL ships for a while. I know they don't do that anymore, and I know that those shows costed extra as well, but all of those ships also had at those times shows available for everybody that were included in the price of the cruise. So question, do you know of any other ship where there are no free shows? I can't think of one. Another thing that costs extra is the fitness studio. There's a small fitness studio on board. I'm gonna go check it out this afternoon. I don't think I'm gonna be able to take any videos in there just because people in the gym are usually kind of, you know, you don't want some strange person taking pictures of you when you're on the treadmill. But so if you want to work out on your way to Oslo or on your way back, you're gonna have to pay extra to get inside. There is also a small sort of swimming water park area with a very small lazy river, a very small water slide, and a very, very small swimming pool, as well as I think 2 hot tubs. And that also costs extra. You book a time slot and then you can go play for 2 hours. That's sort of geared towards families with small kids. And they also have like spa and wellness area for adults, which is connected to the gym. And that also costs extra. So basically what I'm saying is once you're on board, if you want a snack, if you want a coffee, if you want to go swimming, if you want to go to the gym, those all cost extra, and that's like exactly the opposite to what it's usually like on a traditional cruise ship. Here's another thing that's totally different than being on a normal, like, well, let's say a traditional cruise ship as opposed to a ferry that is like a cruise ship. I decided to go on land now, just to leave the ship and say I was in Norway, even though I don't have any big plans, just want to do it once. But nobody's like checking me out of the ship. I just walked out of the ship here, and here's the gangway, and there's like no taking off your hat and your sunglasses, scanning your card, at least not here. Maybe that happens in the terminal. But wait, there's more. And while I look at my list here, let me just remind you to give me a thumbs up and
press subscribe.
Oh, and if you've read Places, please go leave a review. All right, all those not included or no things that I just listed are kind of inconvenient or sort of negative differences in a way. And now I want to tell you something that doesn't happen on this ship that I see as a positive thing, and that is there are no gratuities, no automatic gratuities, and when you buy a drink or buy some food, they don't automatically add a gratuity to it
like on a cruise ship.
So in that sense, once you book the cruise, even though there aren't a lot of things included in the price of the cruise, at least you know exactly how much the cruise is going to cost you in advance. And once you're on board, there aren't any like surprise expenses because any money you're going to spend on board is something you're going to do actively. And there's not going to be a surprise at the end about any sort of automatic gratuities added to your bill or to the cocktails you had in the bar. I like that. Here's another big difference, something else that is not on this ship, which does seem kind of strange to me, and that is there's not one balcony. So many things about the design of this ship seem like a cruise ship, but then when you look at the sides, there's just no balconies. And I'm pretty sure the reason for that is these journeys are offered all year round, every day. So right now, the Colorline Fantasy is here in Oslo, and the Colorline Magic is in Kiel, and they just do this every day, all year. And because a large part of the year is the winter up here, and the winters can be kind of cold, and also I think there are months where the sea is very rough, and so when they were designing the ship, I'm assuming they just thought,
you know what? Let's just skip the balconies. We don't need that.
My cabin does have a very gigantic porthole, and I know there are larger windows as well. Okay, 3 more things that make this different than a traditional cruise. The next one being, you can drive your car onto the ship. I think that's the distinguishing factor of what classifies this as a ferry instead of a cruise ship, is the fact that it transports vehicles and goods. And I don't know any other ship from Royal Caribbean or Disney Cruise Line or Carnival that lets you drive your car onto the ship and take it with you where you're going. And here's another thing that's different. Not only does the back of the ship open up for the cars and vehicles to drive in, but I saw this today when we stopped in Oslo. There's actually a huge hole in the front of the ship too. I don't think any cruise ship that I've ever been on has been able to like open the bow like that. And frankly, I find it kind of scary. I feel like that's the last place I want the ship to open up. I know I'm not a ship's engineer. I'm sure there are tons of safety measures in place, and there's no way that it could open up while you're out at sea until it does. Then what? I'm gonna try not to think about that for the rest of the cruise. Okay, here is the final thing that I was really surprised about, and now that I know it, it's definitely gonna help me enjoy the next time I do this. And by the way, the next time I do this, I wanna do it in the summer because the weather will be nicer and because it stays light until like midnight, and I want to bring my bike with me. But the craziest thing that I've realized that makes this different than a traditional cruise is you can bring your own food and drinks on board, no problem. I literally saw people with coolers full of beer just walking onto the ship. And on the lower decks of the ship, there is a duty-free supermarket, and this is like the biggest shopping area I've ever seen on any ship I've ever been on. Not only do they have cigarettes and packages of water and all that normal stuff, but they also have like groceries, like you can buy chips and steaks and frozen chicken nuggets.
So if you're hungry for a tomahawk steak on your cruise, you can just come down here to the supermarket and grab it. I'm not sure how you're going to cook it, but here they are.
And officially, you're not allowed to consume the things that you buy in the store on board. Officially. So of course, you shouldn't do that, and nobody does.
Yeah, right.
I asked the crew member, so if I buy a bottle of wine from here, I'm not allowed to drink it on board. Is that correct? And he said, yes, that is correct, but nobody's gonna check. I don't know what the penalty is if they would check, but when I left my cabin this morning to go to breakfast and to walk around and take some pictures, a lot of the people who are leaving today had already sort of deserted their cabins. You know, they left to go get breakfast and leave the ship, and the cabin doors were open because the cleaning team was already getting started. And when I looked into the rooms, it was obvious to me there's a lot of people that break this rule. So imagine how great it would be if you could bring your own booze and snacks onto the cruise. That's never going to happen on major cruise lines. They are never going to allow that. Selling the drink packages and the upcharge restaurants and things like that, those are ways that I think the cruise lines make a ton of money. So I think we can all keep dreaming that that's going to catch on to the cruise industry. But as far as the ferry industry goes, I guess they don't mind. Let me know what you think of this list. As always, I try to go through all of the comments and answer any questions that people have. And if you want to see more of what this experience was like, as well as a tour of this tiny little cabin, make sure to check my library here and check back soon. I'm Morgan from the Very Unofficial Travel Guides. Bye-bye.